What's up, you freaking geniuses? So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to write combinations of different transformations of functions, all right? This is kind of a part 2 to the first part that I just did. So in the last video, I show you how to write translations, reflections, horizontal and vertical stretches and shrinks. But in this one, it's going to be kind of a combination of all those, all right? So if you need a little background, I'll link that video in the card above and in the description below. But otherwise, let's get into these, all right? So the first one, 27 right here, f of x is equal to x, all right? So that's what I wrote down. So then it says the first thing we're going to do is vertically stretch it by a factor of 2, okay? So let's just start there. So we're going to vertically stretch this by a factor of 2. So remember, whenever you vertically stretch or shrink something, we have to multiply that whole function by the factor, right? So here it says a factor of 2. So we're going to multiply f of x times 2. So here we're going to say h of x is equal to 2 times f of x. Okay, now the reason I wrote h of x here instead of g of x is because we're going to do two translations, right, or two movements. So the first movement we're going to call h of x, and then on that final movement, because that's what we need to finish with, is g, right? So the last one is going to be g of x. Okay, so here h of x is going to be equal to 2 times f of x. Well, f of x is just x, right? So h of x is simply 2x. Okay, now the other move that we're going to have to do, it says followed by a translation 1 unit up. Okay, so if we're just moving it up or down, remember you just put that at the very end. So 1 unit up would just be plus 1 at the end, right? So then we're going to say g of x is equal to our function h of x plus 1, right? So then g of x is simply equal to 2x plus 1, right? So there's your answer. Okay, the next one is f of x is equal to x, right? So I wrote it down right there. This time we're going to translate this 3 units down. So let's do that first. So f of x is equal to x, but the first translation is just moving it down 3 units. So then we're going to have h of x is equal to x minus 3, okay? And then let's see, followed by a vertical shrink by a factor of 1/3, okay? So again, whenever we have a vertical stretch or shrink, we're just going to multiply our whole function by this factor right here, so 1/3, okay? So then g of x is going to be equal to our function h of x, and we're multiplying our whole factor by this function, right? So it's going to be 1/3 times h of x, okay? So then here g of x is equal to 1/3 times this function right here, x minus 3. Okay, and then if we distribute that, we're going to get g of x is equal to 1/3 x minus 1. Right there. Oh, okay. A couple more. Okay, next one. F of x is equal to the absolute value of x, right there. So it says translate this 2 units to the right. So let's do that first. So we're going to have that h of x is equal to, now whenever you move it side to the left or to the right, remember you just replace any x's you have with an x minus h. Okay, so then here, this is going to be the absolute value of x minus h, right? So that's the first thing. And it says translate it 2 units to the right. Okay, so that would be a move of positive 2, right? So we're going to plug in a positive 2 right here for h, just positive 2. So then h of x is equal to the absolute value of x minus 2, like that. Okay, so that's the first move. Now it says followed by a horizontal stretch by a factor of 2. Okay, so a horizontal stretch, again, means 2 things. So the first one is whatever factor gives us, we have to put in the reciprocal, right? So the reciprocal of 2 would just be equal to 1/2, okay? And the other thing is we're going to multiply this 1/2 by any x's that we have, okay? So then here we're going to have g of x is equal to the absolute value of 1/2. Now, here x is actually not by itself, right? It's grouped with this minus 2. So in this case, we're going to have to multiply this 1/2 by x minus 2 like that. Okay, so then here g of x is going to be equal to this 1/2. We can distribute it into these parentheses right here. So it's going to be equal to the absolute value of 1/2 x minus 1. Okay, boom, uno más. Okay, so lastly, f of x is equal to the absolute value of x. Wrote it right there. So then it says reflected in the y-axis, right? So let's do that first. So again, wherever we have an x, we're just going to replace it with a negative x. Okay, so we're going to have h of x is equal to the absolute value of negative x. Okay. Now it says followed by a translation 3 units to the right. Okay. So whenever we move side to side, we're going to have that x minus h, right? So here we're going to have g of x is equal to the absolute value, and then in this case, we're going to have negative x minus h, like that, right? So it says 3 units to the right, so that would be a positive 3. So we're going to plug in a positive 3 right here for h. So then g of x is equal to the absolute value of negative x minus 3. Okay, and again, you can leave it like this if you want, but if you have to get rid of this negative symbol in the very front, you can factor that out basically, right? So we can say g of x is equal to, and then factoring out a negative sign or negative 1 from both of these, we would have negative 1, and then in parentheses, x plus 3, right? And then close the absolute value right there. Okay, so then this would be equal to this negative 1. Again, we can put it by itself inside an absolute value bar. So it'd be the absolute value of negative 1 times the absolute value of whatever's left, this x plus 3. All right, so again, that basically just goes away. So then we're left with g of x is equal to the absolute value of x plus 3. Boom!
So if you found the video helpful, definitely leave a thumbs up down below. And if you have any other questions or want to see any other examples, just let me know in the comment section below.